The drive back to Alamogordo always seemed to stretch longer with each passing week. The endless expanse of New Mexico's landscape, once a source of awe, now mirrored the growing emptiness I felt inside. My job as a military contractor at Holloman Air Force Base had its moments of excitement, sure, but lately it felt like I was just going through the motions, both at work and in life. Pulling into the driveway of our home, the quiet of the small town wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. This house, once filled with the laughter of our children and the warmth of a family united, now felt like a shell, a stark reminder of the distance that had grown between Elena and me. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lavender greeting me. "Elena." My voice echoed through the empty hallways, unanswered. The silence wasn't unusual. With the kids gone and Elena's newfound love for golf, I often returned to a quiet house. But today, something felt off. A subtle shift in the air, a sense of disarray that set my nerves on edge. I dropped my bag by the door and made my way towards the kitchen, stopping dead in my tracks as faint sounds caught my attention. Laughter. Whispers. Sounds that had no place in our home at this hour, with Elena supposedly at her golf practice. The cold grip of dread clenched my heart as I followed the sounds, each step heavier than the last. They led me to our bedroom, the door ajar, a sliver of light betraying the scene within. "Elena?" I pushed the door open, my voice a mix of disbelief and anger. The sight before me shattered my world into fragments too sharp to grasp. My wife, entangled with someone whose age was closer to our son's than to ours. The young man bolted upright, his face a mask of panic. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Get out," I said, my voice eerily calm, belying the storm raging inside me. He didn't need to be told twice, scrambling for his clothes and stumbling out of the room, leaving a deafening silence in his wake. Elena sat up, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. "Jack, I can explain." I stood there, looking at her, the woman I had shared my life with, feeling a distance I had never imagined possible. "How long, Elena?" It doesn't mean anything. It was just how long?" I repeated, my voice a whisper of betrayal. Tears filled her eyes, but I felt numb, disconnected from the scene unfolding before me. "A few months." "Jack, please, let me explain." I turned away, the weight of her words pressing down on me. "I need some air," was all I managed to say before stepping out of the room, leaving her calls unanswered. The cool evening air did little to soothe the turmoil inside. How had we gotten here? Where did things go so wrong? The questions circled in my mind, each one a sharp jab to the remnants of what I thought our marriage was. I realized then, standing alone under the vast New Mexico sky, that this was a return I hadn't prepared for, a return to a reality I couldn't recognize as mine own. The night had been long and unforgiving. After my abrupt exit, I found solace in the solitude of our backyard, under the vast expanse of the starlit sky, wrestling with the shadows of betrayal that loomed over me. The initial shock had given way to a myriad of emotions, from disbelief to a deep, searing pain that seemed to consume my very being. As dawn painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, I made my way back inside, the silence of the early morning a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. The house, once a sanctuary of love and family, now felt like an elaborate stage where the play of my life had taken a tragic turn. I found Elena in the kitchen, her back to me, the rhythmic sound of a knife chopping against the cutting board the only indication of her presence. She must have heard me come in, but she didn't turn around, the tension between us a tangible force. "Elena," I began, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "We need to talk." She stopped chopping, her shoulders tensing further, if that was even possible. After a moment that felt like an eternity, she turned to face me, her eyes red-rimmed, her usual composure replaced by a vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. "Jack, she started, her voice breaking. "No, let me speak," I interrupted, needing to get the words out before the pain swallowed me whole. Last night, that was something I never thought possible. Not in our marriage. Elena nodded, wiping her hands on her apron, a nervous habit I'd come to recognize over the years. I know, she whispered. And I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Mistake. The word echoed in my mind, a bitter reminder of the chasm that had opened up between us. How does a mistake like that even happen, Elena? She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I was lonely, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're gone so much, and with the kids out of the house, I felt abandoned. Her words were like a punch to the gut, the realization that my absence had played a role in this catastrophe hitting me with full force. So, you turned to someone else? I asked, the incredulity evident in my voice. Is that what our vows meant to you? It wasn't like that, Jack. It wasn't about you. It was a moment of weakness, a way to feel wanted again. A moment of weakness, I repeated, the irony not lost on me. Here we were, standing in the ruins of our marriage, trying to navigate the debris of what was once a solid partnership. Elena reached out, as if to touch me, but I stepped back, the physical distance between us mirroring our emotional divide. I want to fix this, Jack. I want to make it right. I shook my head, the gesture more out of disbelief than denial. I don't know if there's anything left to fix, Elena. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of words unsaid and dreams shattered. We stood there, two strangers bound by years of shared history, each lost in the maze of our own pain and regret. As I turned to leave, Elena's voice stopped me. Jack, please. Don't give up on us. Not yet. I didn't respond, the part of me that wanted to believe in redemption battling the raw, unfiltered pain of betrayal. The discovery of Elena's infidelity had opened a Pandora's box of emotions, each one a reminder of how far we had strayed from the love that once defined us. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path unclear. But one thing was for sure. The discovery had changed everything, and there was no going back to the way things were. The days that followed were a blur, each moment a struggle to navigate the chasm that had opened between Elena and me. The air in our home was charged with an unspoken tension, a silent testament to the wreckage of our marriage. It was during one of these long, suffocating evenings that I decided it was time for a real confrontation, not just the exchange of accusations and regrets, but a genuine attempt to understand how we had arrived at this precipice. I found Elena in the living room, the flickering light of the television casting shadows across her face. She looked up as I entered, her expression weary, bracing herself for another round of painful discussions. Elena, I began, my voice softer than it had been in days, we can't keep going on like this. She muted the television, turning to face me fully. I know, Jack. I don't want to live like this either. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said. About us, about what happened. And I keep coming back to one question. Why? Elena's eyes filled with tears, a mix of sorrow and frustration. I've told you, Jack. I was lonely. I felt neglected. But I know that's no excuse. I made a terrible decision, one I regret more than you can imagine. I nodded, the acknowledgement bitter. And what about us, Elena? Was there nothing worth saving? Did you ever think about what this would do to me, to our family? She reached for my hand, a gesture so familiar, yet so foreign in the context of our current reality. I did, Jack. Every day. But I felt like we had already lost so much of what made us us. You were always away, and I just felt so disconnected from everything. Her words struck a chord, the truth in them harder to deny than I would have liked. I was away, I conceded, but my heart was always here, with you and the kids. I thought we were on the same page, that we were fighting the same battle. We were supposed to be, Elena agreed, a note of desperation in her voice. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. I was weak, Jack, and I made a choice that I will regret for the rest of my life. The raw honesty in her admission was a small comfort, a glimmer of the woman I had married. Elena, I don't know if I can get past this. The trust is broken, and I'm not sure it can be repaired. I understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. And I'll do whatever it takes to make it right, even if it means letting you go. The finality of her words hung between us, a stark reminder of the distance we had yet to bridge. I don't want to make any decisions right now, I said after a moment. But I think we need to start seeing a counselor. Together. If there's any chance of salvaging what's left of us, we need help. Elena nodded, the relief in her eyes mingled with fear. I'll do anything, Jack. Anything to fix this. As we sat there, the gulf of hurt and betrayal still wide between us, I realized that this confrontation was only the beginning. The road to healing, if it existed, would be long and fraught with challenges. But for the first time since that fateful night, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The morning light spilled into the room, casting a soft glow over the remnants of our late-night conversation. It was the first time in weeks that we had spoken so openly, so vulnerably about the chasm that Elena's infidelity had created between us. As I lay awake, watching the dust particles dance in the sunlight, I was acutely aware of Elena's presence beside me. The physical proximity, once a source of comfort and intimacy, now felt like a vast expanse of uncharted territory. Elena stirred, her eyes fluttering open, meeting mine in a silent acknowledgement of the night before. "Good morning," she said, her voice laced with a cautious hope. "Morning," I replied, the normalcy of the greeting feeling out of place in our current reality. We both sat up, the space between us filled with the weight of our shared pain and the fragile hope of reconciliation. "Jack, about last night." Elena began, her hands nervously twisting the hem of the blanket. I meant what I said, I cut in, needing her to know that my commitment to trying was genuine. We need help, Elena. And I'm willing to do the work, to see if we can get past this, if you are. Elena nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I am, Jack. More than anything. I know I've caused so much pain, and I'm so sorry. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. The sincerity in her voice was a balm to the raw edges of my heart. It didn't erase the betrayal or the hurt, but it was a start, a step towards something that might one day resemble healing. We should look for a counselor today, I suggested, the practical step feeling like a lifeline in the midst of emotional turmoil. Yes, let's do that, Elena agreed, a determined set to her jaw. And Jack, whatever happens, I want you to know that I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I made the worst mistake of my life. Her words, meant to comfort, instead opened up a well of confusion within me. I don't doubt your love, Elena. But love wasn't enough to keep us from ending up here, I said, the bitterness creeping in despite my efforts to keep it at bay. Elena reached for my hand, her touch tentative. I know, and I'm so sorry for that. I hope that with time and help, we can find a way back to each other, to a place where love is enough again. As I looked into her eyes, I saw the remorse, the love, and the faintest glimmer of hope. It was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward for us. A path fraught with challenges and pain, but also with the potential for forgiveness and a deeper, more resilient love. Let's start with finding a counselor, I said, the decision feeling like the first step on a long journey back to each other. Elena squeezed my hand, a silent vow to face whatever lay ahead, together. Together, she echoed my thoughts, as if making a promise to both of us. As we rose to face the day, the uncertainty of our future loomed large. Yet, in that moment, there was a sense of unity, a shared commitment to try. The morning after our confrontation brought with it a fragile hope, a tentative blueprint for rebuilding the shattered pieces of our marriage. The days that followed were a testament to the fragility of hope and the daunting task of rebuilding trust. Elena and I had started seeing Dr. Simmons, a counselor who came highly recommended for cases of marital discord stemming from infidelity. Each session peeled back layers of pain, resentment, and unspoken grievances, leaving us emotionally raw, but paradoxically, slightly more connected. It was in these sessions that I learned about retaliation in a form I hadn't considered. Not as an act of vengeance, but as a journey towards self-improvement and redefining one's value in the wake of betrayal. One evening, after a particularly grueling counseling session, Elena and I found ourselves sitting in silence, each lost in our thoughts. The air was thick with the words we had exchanged under Dr. Simmons' guidance, words that had needed to be said but left us feeling exposed and vulnerable. "Elena," I began, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about what Dr. Simmons said today. About how retaliation doesn't have to be about hurting the other person, but can be about growing from the pain." Elena looked at me, her eyes weary but attentive. "I've been thinking about that too," she said. "It's hard, though. The idea of growing from this feels almost impossible right now." I nodded, understanding her sentiment all too well. "It does. But I've been considering what that growth could look like for me. Not just forgiving you or rebuilding us, but also understanding my worth, independent of this mess." Elena's expression softened, a mix of sorrow and support. "Jack, I want you to know that I see your worth, even if I've done everything to make you doubt that. I support whatever you need to do to find your way through this." Her words, sincere and supportive, were a balm to the simmering anger and hurt that had taken residence in my heart. "Thank you, Elena. That means a lot. For me, I think it starts with focusing on my passions again, the things I put aside for so long." "Like your photography?" Elena asked, a tentative hope in her voice. "Yes, exactly like my photography," I confirmed, feeling a spark of excitement at the thought. "I've neglected it for too long, and it's something that's always brought me joy, a sense of purpose." Elena smiled, genuinely. "I think that's wonderful, Jack. Your photography is a part of who you are, and seeing you reconnect with it, it gives me hope too." The conversation shifted then from our usual talks of betrayal and hurt to discussions of dreams and aspirations. It was a small step, but a significant one towards healing and understanding that retaliation in the wake of infidelity could be about reclaiming one's sense of self and purpose. As the weeks passed, my rekindled passion for photography became a therapeutic outlet, a way to channel my emotions into something beautiful and meaningful. Elena, for her part, began her own journey of self-improvement, seeking to understand her actions and how to be a better partner, even if our future together remained uncertain. Our retaliation, it turned out, was not about causing pain or seeking revenge. It was about growth, about finding strength in our vulnerabilities, and about learning to value ourselves and each other in new, profound ways. Several months had passed since Elena's confession, and our lives had gradually settled into a new rhythm. The counseling sessions with Dr. Simmons had become less about airing grievances and more about understanding and communicating our feelings and needs. My photography had not only served as a personal sanctuary, but had also opened up new avenues for me professionally. Elena, on her part, had taken significant steps in her personal development, engaging in volunteer work and attending workshops on trust and integrity. Yet, despite these positive strides, the elephant in the room remained: could our marriage survive the betrayal? One crisp autumn evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Elena broke the silence. "Jack, we've come a long way, haven't we?" she asked, her voice tinged with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I nodded, taking a moment to reflect on the tumultuous journey we had embarked on. "We have. It's not been easy, but we've both grown in ways I never thought possible." Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation we had both been avoiding. "But is it enough, Jack? Is our growth enough to rebuild what was broken?" Her question hung in the air, a palpable force that demanded honesty and courage. I turned to face her, searching her eyes for the answer that had eluded us for months. "Elena, I've asked myself that question every day," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "And the truth is, I don't know if things can ever go back to the way they were. But maybe they don't have to. Maybe we can build something new, something stronger." Elena's eyes filled with tears, a silent acknowledgement of the pain and hope that had defined our journey. I want that, Jack. More than anything. But I understand if you can't. If you can't see a future with me. It was a moment of reckoning, of facing the scars left by betrayal and weighing them against the love and commitment that had once defined our marriage. I reached for her hand, a gesture of connection in the face of uncertainty. Elena, I can't pretend the past doesn't hurt. It does, and it probably always will. But I see the changes in you, the effort you've made to make amends, and it gives me hope. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, or that I have all the answers, but I'm willing to try. To try and build something new with you, if you're willing. Tears streamed down Elena's cheeks as she nodded, squeezing my hand in return. I'm willing, Jack. Whatever it takes, I'm in this. I love you, and I'm committed to doing the work, to being the partner you deserve. As we sat there, hand in hand, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear, a sense of resolve settled over us. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with challenges and the potential for more pain, but it was a path we had chosen to walk together. Our reckoning had not brought easy answers or quick fixes. Instead, it had offered a chance at redemption, at rebuilding our lives and our marriage on a foundation of honesty, respect, and a newfound understanding of what it means to truly love and forgive. The decision to rebuild was just the beginning. The aftermath of betrayal and the journey towards healing was a road marked by victories, setbacks, and the constant need for reassurance and forgiveness. Elena and I had committed to this path, knowing full well the challenges that lay ahead. One evening, as winter began to release its grip on the world, bringing with it the promise of renewal, Elena and I found ourselves in the midst of a familiar tension. The triggers, though less frequent, still had the power to unsettle the fragile peace we'd had built. I saw you talking to her at the party, I said, my voice betraying a hint of the old jealousy that I thought I had overcome. It looked intimate. Elena sighed, a mixture of frustration and understanding in her eyes. Jack, we've talked about this. She's a colleague, and it was nothing more than a work conversation. I'm doing everything I can to rebuild your trust. But it feels like sometimes, no matter what I do, it's never enough. Her words stung, not because they were meant to hurt, but because they held a mirror to my own insecurities and the unfairness of my accusations. You're right, I admitted, the weight of my unfounded suspicions pressing down on me. I'm sorry, Elena. It's just that sometimes the fear and the memories come rushing back, and I get scared. Elena moved closer, her hand finding mine in a gesture of comfort. I understand, Jack. I do. And I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together, remember? Her words, spoken with such sincerity, helped to ease the knot of anxiety in my chest. I remember, I said, squeezing her hand in return. It's just hard, you know, to not let the past cloud the present. We'll get through it together, Elena assured me, her presence a balm to my troubled thoughts. It's going to take time, but I believe in us. And so we continued, navigating the aftermath of our crisis with a newfound determination. The counseling sessions became less frequent, replaced by open and honest conversations between us. My photography, once a solitary refuge, now included Elena, both as a subject and a partner in exploring new creative projects. Elena's commitment to personal growth and transparency had become the cornerstone of our rebuilding efforts. Months turned into years, and the sharp edges of our pain gradually softened. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy us had, in a twisted turn of fate, brought us closer. We learned to communicate better, to express our fears and desires openly, and to support each other's individual growth. One day, sitting in our garden, basking in the warmth of a spring afternoon, Elena looked at me with a smile that reached her eyes. Do you think we made it, Jack? After everything. I took a moment to consider her question, reflecting on the journey we had undertaken. I think we're making it, Elena. Every day, we choose to stay, to work through the hard moments, and to celebrate the good ones. We're not the same people we were, and maybe that's a good thing. Elena nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I love you, Jack. More now than ever. I love you too, Elena, and I'm grateful for this second chance. As we sat there, entwined in each other's arms, I realized that the aftermath of our ordeal was not just about surviving but thriving. It was about learning to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves. It was about discovering that love, in its truest form, is resilient, capable of withstanding storms and emerging stronger on the other side.